Hello, welcome to my show, Coronavirus Update by Heerak on May 24th, 2020. As you know, this is Memorial Day weekend, and Americans love the United States of America, and Americans love God more. That's why they say God bless America, right? So kind of commemorating Memorial Day. We appreciate this. Many Americans consider it as a national anthem or a second national anthem. And with many places in America opening up, people are exploring America's natural beauty, especially this weekend beaches are opening up. So a lot of Americans are going to the beach in Virginia, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts. And today is National Brothers Day. And, in Christianity, Christian believers call each other brothers in Christ. So, as you know, in America, the majority religion is Christianity. There are over 300 million Americans who are Christians, self-identify themselves as Christians. And culturally, United States of America is a Christian culture. And you see that from a lot of the colleges. Georgetown University is a Christian university, the Catholic Jesuit university. Duke University is a United Methodist university. Boston University is Christian. Harvard University was founded by the Puritans. So there's a deep identification with Christian culture in America, whether you are liberal or conservative. And so Christianity can be seen as a unifying factor in America because it's a cultural heritage of 2,000 years and identify with Western civilization. And that's why, I'm happy to call for America going back to God as an official platform for my political campaign for U.S. Congress, for Virginia's 8th District, Arlington, Alexandria, Falls Church, and Fairfax County. So vote for me on November 3rd, 2020 in the general election. I'm running against Don Beyer, who's a Democrat. I'm an independent, and I believe I'm the better candidate. And most Americans treasure their cultural heritage, cultural identity, and that's why President Trump won in 2016, because he celebrated the cultural heritage of Americans. Interestingly enough, a lot of African Americans voted for President Trump, over 1.2 million. But also a lot of people who identify themselves as white nationalists or celebrate Confederate culture and fly Confederate flags, they also voted for Trump. So a part of the reason is that President Trump celebrates Christian culture, and African American culture is very Christian culture. So even while there were slaves in America, they were deeply religiously Christian. And even after emancipation, African Americans are deeply religiously Christian. So those who value their Christian identity were willing to jump ship from the Democratic Party and vote for Donald Trump because he said he will bring Christmas back to America again. So he started to identify himself as a Christian politician who represents Christian America. So many African Americans were willing to vote for him. And white nationalists, they also consider themselves Christians, and they value Christian culture and identity. And so they were voting for Donald Trump as well. And President Trump received most of the evangelical Christian vote. And so, white, Hispanic, Asian, Black. And so Christianity can be seen as a unifying factor in the United States of America. And that's why President Trump won and Hillary lost, because Hillary wanted to identify with everybody. And she did not say, I'm valuing Christian America. So many people in the Democratic Party, especially working class Americans, labor, union members, like United Auto Workers, AFL, CIO, truckers, they identify themselves as Christians. They're part of the labor union, but they value their Christian identity more than any other identity. So they jump ship from their political party and voted for President Trump as well. So kind of pushing Christian America actually works politically, as we saw in the 2016 elections. And I believe that President Trump honestly believes in a Christian America, and that it's not just a political strategy to win election, but obviously because Americans identify themselves as Christians, and we're talking about over 300 million Americans who consider themselves Christians, culturally, religiously, socially. Even if you use Christianity as a political tool, you're gonna get votes and you're gonna win. But I believe that President Trump is a true believer who wants to follow the Bible and lead the country back to God and Bible ethics and morality. And many Christians in America believe that as well. And that's why they support President Trump. And they're willing to overlook a lot of his flaws. Their rationale is King David basically raped Bathsheba and had her husband killed in the battlefield. He was a general. King David put him in the front of the line to get killed, and he was killed. And then David married Bathsheba. So God punished David by killing the son from that adulterous affair. Obviously, after David was married to Bathsheba, the son after the marriage, Solomon, became the next king. But a lot of evangelical Christians, they read the Bible and they know what rulers can do, so they're willing to forgive Trump. It's not like he raped someone, right, and had her husband killed, so they know the story of King David, so they're going to overlook any kind of, sin that President Trump will commit or any other politician will commit, as long as they are willing to push for like a Christian America, and they're going to support, pro-life, against abortion, stand against gay marriage, then they're going to support you, So, America is still a very Christian country. And if you see, less than 1% are really liberal progressives, really, and so liberal progressives, they talk a lot on the media, but they really don't have social power. They don't have popular mandate. And we see that because President Trump won the election in 2016 against Hillary Clinton, whom every political science expert said will win the election, right? But Hillary Clinton did not win. And Hillary Clinton's loss proved to the whole world that America is a very Christian nation, and they will support a very pro-Christian politician who's explicitly pro-Christian, even if he supports white nationalists. Moderate white Americans will vote for him. And, let's face it, every white American has probably a relative, close or distant, who's a white nationalist, So it's like, have you been to your family reunion, where there are hundreds of relatives? you're going to have white nationalists there, you know. I mean, you know, so I mean, yeah, Asians and blacks and Hispanics get offended because, you know, they're not white and they may not have white nationalist relatives, you know, who come to family reunion, but every other white family in America who's Protestant will have somebody in the family who's a white nationalist, member of the KKK or sympathetic to it, or are ideologically or politically white nationalists. You know, you're going to have that, not just in Virginia, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, also in Pennsylvania, Illinois, Massachusetts, Michigan, California. You're going to have it. So, you know, supporting white nationalism is not a liability in American politics, certainly not in federal politics, but also not in state politics, because you can win every election in America at the federal level, like, you know, like U.S. Senate race or U.S. president race without a single black vote, single Asian vote, or single Hispanic vote. So, you know, that's every state, all 50 states. And states like Iowa, I think there's like less than 5% non-whites, you know, in the whole state. So you don't need a single vote of Asians, blacks, or Hispanics to win a Senate race or president race. Congressional races are a little bit different because they're divided into districts, and some districts tend to be like all African American. Some districts tend to be all white, you know, and like Fairfax County, there are a lot of Asians, you know, but even Virginia's 8th district, you know, majority are white. You can win an election for U.S. Congress in Virginia's 8th district without a single black vote, without a single Hispanic vote, without a single Asian vote. Yeah, so that's Arlington, Alexandria, Falls Church, and Fairfax County, parts of Fairfax County, Virginia's 8th district. So this is America. White Americans are the majority. And you know, liberals, progressives think white people get all offended by white nationalists or, you know, but they don't, you know, because an average American working 9 to 5 job in a, you know, working class setting, you know, they're not concerned about political correctness. You know, that's not an issue. And many of them have relatives who are white nationalists. They themselves may agree with a lot of the ideas of white nationalists, even if they're not card-carrying Aryan Nation or card-carrying KKK. And so election in 2016 proved that America is still white America in the sense that President Trump can openly support white nationalists and win the election because every white Protestant has a relative, close or distant, who's a white nationalist or white national sympathizer. And, you know, and so, you know, I think like a lot of liberal progressives make a lot of big deal out of it. But, you know, every culture, there is a pride, like, you know, among the African Americans, there's Black pride. You have the Black Panthers, Black Lives Matter, there's Black nationalism, right? And there's this idea, you know, we Black people matter, right? We're important. And that's a type of nationalism. And, you know, white nationalists say we white people are important, you know, so it's the same kind of thing. And even among Asians, you have Indians, Pakistani, they don't want to marry anybody who's not Indian or non-Pakistani, right? And that's like that with Koreans. Korean parents want you to marry Korean. And some of them really push that. And same with Japanese and Chinese. You know, and so in every culture and every nationality, you have a type of cultural ethnocentrism. So even in Arlington, Alexandria Falls Church, and Fairfax County, where there are over 100 nations represented, every single one of that ethnic group will be kind of nationalist. Like they want their nationality or their culture to be dominant within their social setting or within their children's worldview, you know? And so, you know, so white liberal progressives, they're kind of out of touch with reality. And in a sense, white liberal progressives are not multicultural because in a truly multicultural setting, each culture will be allowed to privilege their own culture, right? So you have 100 nationalities in Arlington, Alexandria Falls Church, and Fairfax County. in a multicultural setting, you would allow every one of those ethnic groups, 100, to celebrate their own culture and say that that's their own culture and that they want to abide by it. Like they don't try to commit cultural genocide. However, white liberal progressives, they want to commit cultural genocide. They want all these 100 nations to accept liberal imperatives like, oh, abortion is a human right, gay marriage is human right. And they try to destroy cultures that disagree with that. A lot of traditional cultures reject that, like Latino cultures, they reject abortion because they're deeply Catholic, traditionally Catholicism, supporting cultures, and they reject homosexuality and gay marriage. And so white liberal progressive, by trying to force people to see things their way, are practicing a type of cultural genocide in Arlington, Alexandria, Falls Church, and Fairfax County. And that's why minorities, people of color, hate white liberals, white progressives. And even in Arlington, Alexandria, Falls Church, and Fairfax County, they really hate white liberal progressives who try to destroy their culture. Because let's say if you're from Bolivia or Peru or Mexico, you don't want your children to be gay or homosexual or have homosexual marriage. You reject that. Whether you vote for Democrat or whether you vote for Don Beyer, you reject homosexuality for your own home, for your own children. So that's a dominant theme in Arlington, Alexandria, Falls Church, and Fairfax County among Hispanic Americans. And it's like that with all immigrants, I mean, show me immigrant communities that want their children to be gay, And so white liberalism, white liberal progressive, they are trying to commit cultural genocide by trying to force each culture to accept their cultural imperatives, by using grandiose terms like gay marriage is a human right, abortion is a human right, and people of color deeply resent that because they see that as like a white people, white liberals trying to force themselves upon people of color. And there was colonialism in Africa, there was colonialism in Asia. So what these cultures see, and there's colonialism and massive genocide in Latin America. So Latinos, Asians, and Blacks see white progressives trying to force their cultural imperatives like gay marriage onto traditional societies as a form of colonialism, like a neo-colonialism, And so there are 100 nationalities represented here. Muslims all reject homosexuality. Asian cultures all reject homosexuality. African cultures all reject homosexuality. Latino cultures all reject homosexuality. So when these white liberal progressive come in pushing homosexuality and gay marriage, they're deeply resented, as like traces of white colonialism trying to dominate traditional societies. 100 nationalities in Arlington, Alexandria, Falls Church, and Fairfax County all resent white progressives trying to force themselves upon their traditional culture. They want to operate it within their microcultural system in America because they feel that this is a free country and they have the right to hold to their own cultural value system. And I go to Korean churches, in Arlington, Alexandria, Falls Church, and Fairfax County. I had the, Alexandria Town Hall for my campaign for U.S. Congress in Virginia's 8th District. And I talked to the pastor, we talk and I talked to other Korean pastors, in this area, and I talked to non-Korean pastors, and there's among the ethnic group churches, Ethiopian churches, Korean churches, Latino churches, there's a deep resentment of white liberal progressives trying to force homosexuality and gay marriage. Because that's something that they're fighting against because they want the children in their church to marry, heterosexually, like one man with one woman and form a traditional family. And so they see white liberal progressives as a threat to their community. They see white liberal progressives as a threat to their children. So this is the perception that people of color have in Arlington, Alexandria Falls Church, and Fairfax County. And white liberals are so out of touch, they don't see it. And even among the white population in Arlington, Alexandria Falls Church, and Fairfax County, let's unpack this. Majority of the whites in America are either Catholic or Protestant. Catholicism officially opposes gay marriage and homosexuality as being against God's law. You know, that's official position of the Catholic Church. That's the official position of Georgetown University because it's a Catholic university. That's the official position of Marymount University because it's a Catholic university. That's the official position of all Jesuits because they follow the Bible. And all the bishops in the United States, Conference of Bishops in Washington, D.C., that is the official position that homosexual and gay marriage is against God's law. So all the Catholics in Arlington, Alexandria Falls Church, and Fairfax County want their children to be heterosexual and get married heterosexually in sacrament of holy matrimony. So they personally resent this kind of gay marriage push because they feel that that could influence their children to become homosexuals. And there are Catholics becoming homosexuals, and the parents kind of resent the white liberal progressive movement that they see as a threat to their family and their family's kind of continuation, you know, from generation to generation as practicing Catholics, you know. And so white liberal progressives are very out of touch with the reality of the Catholic communities in the United States of America. And that's why a lot of Catholics voted for President Trump in 2016, because he was, you know, he said, you know, a lot of things that resonated with Catholics. You know, they want to celebrate Christmas. They don't want their nativity scenes removed from town halls or city halls, right? And so they resent people who try to remove them. And when President Trump said, I'm going to bring Christmas back again, you know, it resonated with the Catholic community, which have deep-seated resentment against those who are trying to remove nativity scenes from town halls, you know, or county halls, you know, like Arlington, Alexandria Falls Church, and Fairfax County, you know, and all the Catholics want to see a nativity scene in their town center, you know. You know, most of them, if not all, want to see that. And same with the Protestants, you know, even if you're a liberal Protestant, you want to be able to celebrate Christmas as a Christian because you call yourself Christian. And these, even liberal Protestants, resent being told that they cannot celebrate Christmas, you know, because they value their own identity as Christians, whether they're liberal or moderate or conservative. And so white liberal progressives who are kind of militant, they are out of touch with reality because they don't understand how Americans are. And that's why President Trump has a massive support among majority of Americans, you know, Catholic, Protestant, and Orthodox Christians, and even Muslims, you know, Muslims, Hindus, because the value system that President Trump projects kind of matches the traditional value systems of microcultures, whether you're Hindu or Muslim, Pakistani, or Muslim, you know, Arabic. And that's why President Trump won in 2016, because he presented a value system that matches the value system of the communities that exist in America. Now, you know, white progressives are kind of out of touch with reality in this regard. And they are kind of militantly pushing their agenda. And it's creating a problem because majority of Americans, you know, over 300 million Americans, do not agree with the white liberal progressive agenda. That's why you did not have Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren really winning or having any chance of kind of securing the nomination because white progressivism is rejected. By majority of Democrats. And so that's something that white liberal progressive has to realize, but they're kind of blinded by their ideology, you know? And that's why they don't see it. They don't really see how Americans are. and what the value systems of Americans are, like what people of color value, what immigrant communities value. These white liberal progressives cannot see it, because they have these grandiose white liberal progressive ideologies they think are like righteous, when in fact, majority of the ethnic groups in Arlington, Alexandria Falls Church, and Fairfax County would consider like homosexuality and gay marriage as evil, just because they're coming from that cultural vantage point. And so there's a clash of cultures, clash of civilizations that white liberal progressives don't understand. And they don't see themselves as like colonialist or neo-colonialist, but that's what they're doing, right? They're saying you must accept gay marriage, or else, they come with their fist. And so the minority communities, communities of color, and immigrant communities see that and they say, who do they think they are? Just because they're white, they think they could like tell us what to do. And so there is a kind of growing resentment among immigrant communities and communities of color against white progressives that is kind of growing every day. And white liberal progressives don't even see it. That's because they're so blinded by their ideology, White liberals don't care about people; they care about their ideology, right? And so that's why, white liberals will fire Black Christians who are against gay marriage from important jobs just for their religious position. And this happened to Atlanta fire chief. He was fired just because he opposed homosexuality. He sued the city of Atlanta and got a settlement for $1.2 million. But and he's African American, and this is happening to a lot of African American evangelical Christians. And most African Americans are against homosexuality, and I remember going to AME, American Methodist Episcopal Church in San Jose. Their whole Bible study is about how homosexuality is evil. So in the African American communities, church communities, whether the church is liberal or conservative, there is this perception that homosexuality is evil. And it comes from a cultural vantage point because, it's a traditional culture, and it's kind of it has a traditional lineage, right? It goes back hundreds of years, this religiosity. And it's always been kind of anti-homosexual because Romans chapter 1 is against homosexuality. And so majority of African American Christians, even now, I would say are kind of opposing gay marriage and homosexuality personally. And I mean, you have a few exceptions here and there, but you will be hard pressed to find any African American who want their children to become homosexual and get married with a homosexual, So you have to see the practice, to understand the value system of a culture. And in anthropology, Case Boland at Brown University described this as epoche. It's like you cannot just judge a culture. You have to kind of go inside a culture and see what the rituals are, what the cultural practices are, in order to understand what the value system of the culture is, right? So white liberals are not interested in going in and not trying to understand different cultures. They're interested in imposing their ideas, their views on other cultures and kind of dominating and forcing cultures to accept their liberal agenda, And so in a sense, these white liberal progressives are not acting in a very scientific way because anthropology is a social science. Actually, it's a humanities that utilize some social scientific methodologies. Actually, anthropology may be social science rather than humanities. But, like history is both humanities and social science. So, anthropology may be that way as well. Although sociology is definitely a social science, not humanities. But there are fields which they straddle both humanities and social sciences. And the difference between humanities and social sciences is social sciences use a theoretical framework to examine realities, Whereas humanities, they generally try to use text and observation uh, with an open mind rather than trying to force a theoretical framework. So, I mean, obviously, I'm simplifying things right now. So, some people say social scientific methodology is more deductive, meaning you go from a theory and you examine using the theory. And humanities is more inductive. You kind of observe and then you try to come up with a theory afterwards. So, obviously, I'm kind of simplifying it, but that is one way to look at it. As you know, I'm a expert in history. I did my doctoral studies at UCLA, and I'm an expert of Jewish studies, Jewish history. And so you will learn a lot from this show in the field of history and cultural studies. And so I provide you with expert opinion that is based on scientific methodologies in social sciences and in humanities. So you're very fortunate that Leonardo da Vinci of 21st century, like Heerak and Kim, has created this COVID-19 update by Heerak show, so you can watch this daily and become erudite. And that goes for everyone, even people who have PhDs. You will learn something here from me because obviously I'm the Leonardo da Vinci of 21st century. So all you PhDs out there in Virginia's 8th district, you have something to learn from me. And so you're very fortunate in that regard. So I use my vast intellectual prowess, formal training, as well as research and experiential observation analysis to provide insight into COVID-19, but also into social realities, because COVID-19 is a virus. And you don't just study the virus, you study how the virus impacts individuals biologically, but also culturally and socially, right? And public health or public health nursing tries to understand how communities are impacted in terms of health and healthcare and how we can improve that. And in order to do that, public health tries to attempt to understand cultural realities, although that's not their priority, because at a certain level, you have to understand what is important to an individual culture, what makes an individual act the way that he or she does, and how is culture tied to that. So obviously at the public health and public health nursing level, there's a superficial examination of culture because that's not their priority. Their priority is healthcare and health. And that's why, having Heerak and Kim in healthcare improves healthcare, because I'm actually an expert in culture analysis, sociological analysis, examining sociological environment, emotional environment, political environment, and how that impacts individuals and groups, right? I'm an expert on individual identity and group identity. That is a specialty of mine that I've devoted much time to. So you're very fortunate, and that's why, as an expert of history, I can prefer this analysis that liberal progressives in the United States are functioning as a type of cultural colonialists, right? They have these big, grandiose dictates that they want to force upon different ethnic groups and racial groups in America. And they're deeply resented by the subcultures in America who reject that value system, right? They're not going to accept it. And so we're beginning to see a type of dialectics. You have the thesis, antithesis, and then you have the synthesis. And so we are experiencing a type of dialectics that is playing out over a longer period. And one of the results of that dialectic is victory of Donald Trump in 2016, because he sided with traditional cultures even though he might not have known consciously that that's what he was doing. So even when he was supporting white nationalists explicitly, he had 1.2 black people vote for him. You see what I mean? Because he supported white nationalists, but a lot of the systematic value system that Trump supported resonated with African Americans who also agree with that. So, for example, celebration of Christmas, oppositions to transgenderism, um, calling for Christian America. These are things that you hear in Black churches every Sunday, Hispanic churches every Sunday, Korean churches every Sunday, white churches every Sunday. So President Trump might not have strategically understood Hispanic, Black, and Asian communities, but what he said, kind of aligning himself with white evangelicals, resonated, throughout different ethnic and cultural groups. And so you have a confluence of different social, cultural, religious forces coming together in President Trump's victory. And so he's fortunate. In a sense, I would argue that President Trump lucked out because he probably did not understand what was going on. But all these social, cultural, political, religious tensions that have been kind of brewing for a while, kind of was tapped into in the rhetoric, like right-wing rhetoric of President Trump. And so, America is culturally very conservative. Even Democrats, majority of them are culturally very conservative. And so cultural conservatism kind of resonates with America, and that's just, some say it's because of the Puritan heritage. Others say it's because of the work ethic. America's arranged into working communities. And when people are working that much, they have little time outside of their microcosm, which is like their immediate family, or what we refer to as the canon family. And so within the context of working 8 to 12 hours a day, having your children and a family, it's hard not to be socially conservative, and so some people point to that because majority of Americans will get more than like 1 week or 2 week of vacation. They use that all on religious holidays like Easter, Christmas, or Thanksgiving, or going to church or church conferences, because all the churches have like summer retreats, winter retreats. They use up all their vacations for those. So their identities revolve around church communities, religious communities. So majority of Americans work 9 to 5, but their weekends are filled with church activities, or religious activities, or so that's just majority of Americans. There are exceptions to that, but exceptions prove the rule because majority of Americans operate that way. And so white liberal progressives, they're dying right now. And everybody who aligns themselves with white progressives, they're going to die with them. They're going to be like dinosaurs because they clash with the reality on the ground, right? They have all these theories, but theories are worthless when realities on the ground don't match that. And white progressives, they don't understand the power of popular discontent, popular resentment. White liberals don't understand that in America, and that's their downfall. Because they think their intellectualism can maintain their liberal dynamic or liberal ethics. It can't. They think that their conceptualization of ideas that make sense to them in their mind, they assume that it makes sense to everyone, and they don't. And they don't understand that, and they think that they could use laws to force the populace to conform to their liberal ideas. So they're like, oh, we passed this law, hey, now everybody has to follow it. It doesn't work that way because they're not historians like I am. So they may not understand that. They think power is in the institutions, power is in the laws, power, is in the enforcement. But what they don't understand is all the police officers are human beings who resent certain things, like the rest of the population. So when the French Revolution happened, a lot of the soldiers and police officers eventually joined the people and start attacking the authority figures, government officials, um, because at the end of the day, uh, people rise, and in the French Revolution, they killed off all the aristocrats, and royalty, decapitated them, and that's what happened in the Russian Revolution as well, right? They killed off all the wealthy because the wealth class is only 1%. It's not that hard to kill off. I mean, like physically kill off, if the revolution decides to, and that's what happened in Russian Revolution and the French Revolution, and in America, uh, you know, uh, a lot of the revolutionaries were elites. And so we did not have decapitation of elites, although I think they had some trials of like English Tories or loyalists. But, because a lot of the wealth class sided with the people and represented the value system of the people, you didn't have decapitation of the wealth class in the American Revolution, which differs from the French Revolution and Russian Revolution. President Donald Trump, as you know, is a part of the wealth class. He's a billionaire. But because he's kind of tapping into the popular discontent and speaking their language, um, you know, there's a certain amount of safety for him. That is not to say there's safety for other billionaires, and so, it's just, I think, white liberal progressivism, which kind of recruits from the wealth class, is in trouble. And one of the things that you notice is there's a unified attack of the wealth class, both in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. So uh, there's a deep resentment of the billionaires, and multimillionaires. And that exists in the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. So I would argue that from a dynamics of wealth class, I think wealth class, meaning like the 1%, who own majority of America's wealth, they are in danger. They may not survive. Um, if there is a revolution, they may actually, their wealth may be confiscated. I think that is a possibility. Like in the Russian Revolution and the French Revolution, that's what happened. And so, obviously, you don't want a revolution to happen, but I mean, do you think the wealth class in France wanted a revolution? They didn't even see it coming. Do you think wealth class in Russia wanted a revolution? They didn't even see it coming. So, I mean, revolutions are interesting because in hindsight, historians understand what happened, what were the causes and effects that gave rise to revolutions that succeeded. But while they were happening, most people did not understand that. Do you see what I'm saying? So they say hindsight is 2020. And so if the wealth class in America think that there won't be a revolution in America, I think they're fooling themselves because it can happen in any country, in any society. And the fact that both Republicans and Democrats are resentful of the wealth class um, is a good social indicator, that such revolutions targeting the wealth class are possible, right? Because I would say during President Reagan's time, most Republicans supported the wealth class, even working class Republicans. And they kind of saw them as positive. And we call that trickle down economics. They believe that if the wealth class got rich, we would also get rich, right? Trickle down. The wealth would trickle down to the working class. And so, so they would argue that Republican Party was the party of the wealthy. That's not the case anymore. A lot of the Republicans, they resent the wealth class, and they want the wealth class to share their wealth, or with rest of the population. And that's language in different ways, but that's where we are. I would say, we're in a deeply socially unstable environment in the United States where revolution can happen that targets specifically the wealth class. And look at the language that Bernie Sanders used. It's not just Bernie Sanders. You have conservatives using the same language against the wealth class, perhaps for different reasons. But right now there's, I would say, convergence of anti-wealth class sentiment in the majority of Americans, Republicans and Democrats. And obviously President Trump has been able to stay above that because he identifies with the religiosity of the working class. And for the working class, the most important value system is their religion. And that's why Karl Marx said religion is opium of the masses, because masses, they desire religion, and so on one level, Karl Marx was right. People need religion. And President Trump understood that in 2016. And when you identify with the religion of the working class, and working class is always the majority of the population, generally over 50%, you are kind of safe. They'll protect you because you're protecting their religion. You see how that works? But the moment that you kind of become dissociated from their religion, then you go into jeopardy. And so I would argue that President Trump should stay away from like any kind of practice that would kind of deviate from the working class, like strong Christian identity, wanting a Christian America. That's like the working class America. Yeah, I mean, it's just everybody has group identity and they treasure their own group identity. So it's kind of hard to dilute that. And liberal progressives and people like John McCain did not understand it because they've been in Washington, D.C. so long. There's a wheeling and dealing in D.C., but most of Americans who are working class, they don't wheel and deal. They live among people who are like them, who think like them, who act like them, they share the culture, and that's their whole 365 days a year. And so, Washington, D.C. is not normative in terms of representing America. You have, over 100 different embassies here. And so it's culturally very diverse and mixed. And that's not America. Maybe in parts of the cities that's kind of like that. But as I said, even in Arlington, Alexandria, Falls Church, and Fairfax County, Ethiopians meet in Ethiopian churches. Koreans meet in Korean churches. So, they live in their subculture socially most of the time, the majority of their ethnic group. And so the lived experience of whites in America and whites in Arlington, Alexandria Falls Church, and Fairfax County is distinctively white culture, because other ethnic groups choose to isolate themselves into subcultures that are Ethiopian churches or Korean churches, Chinese churches, and so you have white churches that are white churches, and I visit a lot of churches in this area, Arlington, Alexandria, Falls Church, and Fairfax County. I know, assure you, they're white churches. Basically, they're all white. Everybody who's at the church are white. And that's like the case in Falls Church, Fairfax County, Arlington, Alexandria. And I've been to many churches. It's like that. So I've been to Hispanic churches. I've been to Asian churches. I've been to Black churches. In Alexandria, there are Black churches. It's all Black. I've been to those. And if you're watching my show, I was there worshiping with you. I was the only non-Black person at the church. Or there was one white woman there, but yeah. So basically, she and we were the only non-Blacks on the church. Yeah, and that's America. So what does that mean for the future? What does that mean in terms of understanding the value systems of America? Obviously, white liberal progressives are too lazy to kind of look into it and study that or think about that. And I think that's just disrespectful to the diversity that's in America. Spending time to understand other cultures is more important. Try to understand rather than like enforcing your own ideas. And, and white liberals, they just don't do that. And that's why they have the resentment of most people of color, most immigrant communities, because they don't feel like they're being respected by white liberal progressives. They're just trying to culturally dominate. And you see that at Georgetown University, these white liberal progressives who are pushing gay marriage or whatever, they don't want to see your perspective. They just want to push their perspective and force you to conform to their perspective. It's like, they're like, they think they're like better than you, and that's like, I mean, so I could see why people in Arlington, Alexandria, Falls Church, and Fairfax County would resent white liberal progressives. And the only reason they keep voting for Dunbar is because the Republican Party in this area are so weak. They're not willing to stand up against gay marriage. They oppose gay marriage, but they're not willing to speak up publicly, or kind of be like President Trump. Be publicly offensive even to liberal progressives. Then they would be able to get the loyalty of the communities that are deeply resentful of liberal progressives, right? But because the Republican Party in Arlington, Republican Party in Alexandria, Republican Party in Fairfax County, Republican Party in Falls Church tried to present themselves as moderate, they're not going to get the support of ethnic minority communities because they're like, we're choosing between a liberal who's like trying to dominate us and a bunch of Republicans who are moderate. We don't even know what they believe in. They look kind of similar. So they're not going to support the Republican Party. That's why the Republican Party is very weak here in Northern Virginia. And I've talked to the chairman of the Fairfax County Republicans, Tim Hannigan, the one who had his term from 2019 to 2020. I said, there's no way you're gonna get Republican votes in Northern Virginia if you present yourself as moderates, like the way you are. Because there are people who are deeply resentful of liberal progressive, but if you look like liberal progressives, they're not gonna support you because you look too closely like liberal progressives. The language you're using, the language of tolerance, they're not gonna support you because they can't tell the difference. And that's the problem that many establishment Republicans have. And that's why, Ted Cruz almost lost in Texas because he started to speak the language of like moderates. And you're not going to have Republicans enthusiastic to vote for you if you're going to sound moderate. And there are Democrats who would vote for you if you're like anti-gay marriage, anti-abortion, you're like explicit, you're kind of pushing these agendas. And then because there are Catholics who are Democrats who will vote for you just because of abortion issue. But you're not going to get their votes if you don't emphasize it, right? And that's why Ted Cruz almost lost last election. He may lose the next one if he sounds moderate. Senate Majority Leader McConnell almost lost his election too, because if you sound moderate, the Republicans are not going to be enthusiastic about you, so they may not come out and vote for you. And Democrats who may vote for you because they resent white liberal progressives, they're not going to vote for you because you sound like that. Because you're like, oh, tolerance, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't get anybody excited among the working class. And so I told Tim Hannigan, the chair of the Republican Party, that you have to, in Fairfax County, you have to kind of swing right wing. Unless the Republican Party in Northern Virginia swing right wing, you're never going to win this area. And he doesn't believe me. He disagrees with me, and I think he's absolutely wrong. I think his proof is in the pudding. Don Beyer, he's been winning like 70% of the votes because he's liberal, but Republicans always come out seeming like they're moderate. So who's gonna, they look similar, and you're not gonna win. And that's the case with John McCain. He looks so much moderate, looking like Democratic Party, that he never won the president race. Same with John Kerry. Was it John Kerry? No, who's the Mormon guy who ran? Mitt Romney. He didn't win the presidency because he is kind of moderate, looks like a Democrat. But Trump came out using foul language, that against the liberals, kind of supporting white nationalists. And so he got working class people in the Democratic Party and Republican Party excited about him. And so you know, you know, and so you have to understand the people in order to win their votes. Um, and I think, you know, I don't know if President Trump 100% understands the people, but he's been doing things that made the people happy, the working class people, majority of them, and that's why he's gotten support from them. Um, and so, yeah. So today we're gonna go and see the death rate. And good news, we only have 635 deaths today. So yesterday we had 97,076 deaths. Today we have 97,711. I don't think this is a new reality. I think it's like a one-time thing, or, it's like like 1 or 2 days we may have this low figure and then it's going to jump back up again. I think the new normal is over 1,000 deaths per day. But I would argue that it's a gift from God. As you know, I try to understand spiritual explanation. And the fact is, President Trump, a couple of days ago, declared all churches as essential so they could open. And I think God saw that as a favorable thing. And so God is giving little death today because a lot of churches are opening up today throughout the United States of America. And this is one good example of what I mean when I say President Trump kind of taps into the popular discontent. American people like their churches. They like to worship in their churches. And many American people are willing to die worshiping in their churches. And President Trump understands that. So he's like, declaring churches as essential. Um, he gets the loyalty of the working class Americans. And even non-working class, even elites, they like their churches too. But especially the working class, because working class is always the majority. Majority of any population in any country is the working class, right? People who work, with their hands or in a kind of a, lowly jobs, quote lowly jobs. And Hillary kind of looked down on them and called them deplorables, right? And majority of any country is that population. Um, and so, yeah. So President Trump is again doing certain things that are smart politically. I'm sure he believes that churches are important and churches should open up. But the kind of things that he's saying and doing, supporting worship service of the population of the masses, that kind of brings the loyalty of the populace. Black Christians want to worship in churches. White Christians want to worship in churches. Korean Christians want to worship in churches. Latino Christians want to worship in churches. So just kind of making that statement, he's going to get more voters. So he seems to be tapping into popular discontent about stay-at-home orders, especially by liberal Democrat governors, who they resent as disrespecting them and their culture and their religion. And so, you could be Catholic, Orthodox, or Protestant Christian. They will feel the same way. They want to go to the church. They resent the governor who prevents them from going to church as persecuting them. That's how they understand it. And President Trump understands this reality. And that's why he's consistently been politically smart, I would say, because you cannot change the way people think. You cannot force people to think differently. They'll think what they think. And you could try to persuade them to think differently, but in most cases you won't. And that's why, historians talk about the zeitgeist, spirit of the age. The way people think, you can't really control. You cannot control by law. You cannot control, even by persuasion, because it's a type of a corporate mass dynamics that's uncontrollable, and people don't know how to control it. But in hindsight, historians examine it and say, oh, X, Y, and Z probably were the factors that shifted popular sentiment. So they examine all that, but it's hard to understand it while it's happening, because historians always look back, and look at the evidence, and generally it's done and over with. So you have like evidence that's codified, and then you can study like cause and effect using these documents or artifacts. But while it's happening, it's hard to predict because you don't have the hindsight, right? It's happening right now. There's so many moving pieces, and they're hard to control. And so another smart thing that President Trump did was he marched with March for Life. There are Americans who are single issue voters, and many of them are abortion voters. There are many Catholics who hate Donald Trump, who voted for Trump because he supports abortion ban, illegalization. They still hate Trump, but they voted for him in 2016. And as long as he's aggressively anti-abortion, they'll vote for him again in 2020. And this is what we call single issue voters. They hate Trump, but they'll vote for Donald Trump because they want abortion illegalized. And we're talking about millions of people out there who are like that. They're going to vote for you if you oppose abortion, even if they hate you. And this is America, And so President Trump was very smart to march with March for Life because they will protect his life so that they could illegalize abortion, right? So even if they hate Trump, they're going to protect his life, and they're going to make sure he's elected because they want abortion legalized. And so these are what we call single issue voters, and there are millions of them in America. Single issue voters who will vote for you just because you oppose abortion. And you see that, from each state, kind of the kind of laws that they pass against abortion is a good indicator of the popular sentiment. And so a lot of people who went to church today throughout the nation, with President Trump declaring church as essential, they're deeply grateful to Trump, which will translate into votes, right? Trump just needs to remind them he declared churches essential. So kind of tapping into religiosity is definitely a way to win in politics, not just in America, but in every country. In India, the BJP party came into power because they tapped into the religiosity of the masses. And so, it's a good example, of modern day politics where tapping into religiosity is what gets you the votes. Same with Brazil president. He presents himself as a Christian president who supports the Bible. And so he stormed into victory. He had massive popular support, even though Brazil has all these COVID-19 deaths. Because you have to remember, death are important to people, but there are things that are more important than death. That's like religion. Because most people are willing to die for their faith or their religion. So they don't mind all this COVID death if the president supports the Bible that they value. The COVID-19 death doesn't matter. And that's why you see in America as well, we have like 20 to 30,000 cases rising every day, right? So we went from 1,622,447 cases today, 1,642,021 cases. And we have 97,711 deaths. But still, many Americans are loyal to Trump because he marches against abortion with the American people who are pro-life, because he is willing to open up churches, right? That's why he has the loyalty of the working class. And they don't care that all these people are dying. And so, in a sense, this is what I call political magic, because there are things that people value far more than their life. And as long as you tap into that, it doesn't matter what's going on. They're going to be loyal to you. And I don't know if President Trump understands this reality or not, but I'm a historian who examines history. And in the past, for the past thousands of years, I've seen this play itself out time and time again. And so I'm not surprised that Americans are loyal to Trump, even though there's all these deaths. And people who support Trump, their support hasn't diminished at all. despite the fact that our nation is #1 for COVID-19 death. They don't blame President Trump. The media blames President Trump, but no one who's a Trump supporter blames President Trump. And so, let's see, liberal progressives don't understand this dynamic, that most people have things that they value more than their life. For example, everyone who's a parent out there, do you value your life more than your child's life? Most of the parents will say yes. They'll be willing to give up their life without even thinking for their children, whether you're liberal, conservative, wealthy, or poor, because you love your children. That shows that you value something more than your own life, right? So I'm just illustrating a point here. But there are things more important than that for many people. And that's their religion. Many people consider their religion more important than their children. And so, as long as Donald Trump supports Christian America and, Bible, there are people who are going to sacrifice themselves and their life for Trump. It's just that way. You know how parents sacrifice their own life for their children when push comes to shove because they value their child? In the same way, when Americans value their religion, a majority of Americans are Christians, they're willing to sacrifice their life for you if you defend their religion. And that's something that white liberal progressives don't understand, because they don't understand religion and value of religion. So they understand what loving their children means, that they're willing to sacrifice their lives for their own children, liberal progressives. So they understand that. They could have empathy for that, but they cannot have empathy for religion because they don't understand it. And they kind of have disdain against religious people, all these liberal progressives. And so, they're kind of judgmental and kind of looking down on religious people. So you can't really have empathy when you're looking down on people like that, In order to have empathy, you have to kind of see them as important, see their value system as important, and kind of approach it from a humble perspective. If you don't approach it that way, you can't have empathy, meaning you cannot understand where they're coming from. So white liberal progressive, because they're so elitist, right? They're like, oh, gay marriage is a human rights campaign.org.com. And, because they're so wrapped up in their own mind and they're elitist, they're trying to force you to obey their, social justice dictates, as they call it. People resent that. They're like, why are you trying to force your beliefs on us, But they don't understand that. They don't understand what's going on because they think that you should obey them because their idea is so important, right? So they're living in their head. That's like their world. Most people do not live in their head. They live in the world, working with their hands or whatever. And so these white liberal progressives are just like far out. They don't understand what's going on. They think if like they change a law or they put something on the code of ethics, that everybody must follow it and that everybody will follow it. It doesn't work that way. People, culture is not something you can dictate. Culture, if you're an anthropologist or sociologist, you understand what I'm saying. Culture is not top down, but it's bottom up. That's culture, and so if you don't understand that culture is bottom up, then you have no hope. But most liberal progressives don't understand that. They think everything is top down. You could pass law to change. You could pass policy to change. Why do you think all these school of public policy have all these idiots doing their master's degree in it? Because they think you could, as long as you change a policy through like an existing institution, everybody will follow it, right? These elitists are idiots. They don't understand because they haven't studied human history. They don't understand that power doesn't rest in a policy. Power rests in the people. And that's why, U.S. Constitution, Declaration of Independence, that we the people, right? So one great thing about U.S. documents, founding documents, is they understood this reality of popular power. Um, and so, and President Trump is kind of understanding that as well. So he's tapping into popular discontent. I think he's making some mistakes in this election cycle, meaning he's kind of going away from the working class conservatism or fundamentalism even, and that's going to cost him, because working class don't identify with moderate direction that John McCain went toward, like the establishment Republican position. They don't understand that. I mean, that's why even in Texas, which is a Republican state, Ted Cruz almost lost his election. And in Kentucky, which is a Republican state, McConnell almost lost his election last time because they've kind of become moderate. And nobody likes moderates. Working class people don't like moderates. I mean, especially Republicans, you're not going to win. But like if you live in Washington, D.C. enough, you think that the reality is Washington, D.C., and that's not the reality. Reality that you live in is not the reality of the world. And that's why liberal progressives don't understand. They're in their little liberal progressive pond, and they think that's the reality. And you see that at Georgetown University. Some intellectuals think that like their mind is the world. No, your mind is your mind is your mind. That's all it is. It's not the world. It's not a social reality. Your mind is just your mind. In order to understand the world or social reality, you have to understand the trends of the people, right? What's going on in your mind is a liberal progressive. That's just your mind. That's just going on in your mind. It's not going on in the world, right? In America, most people are getting married heterosexually, having children. They work 9-to-5 jobs. They have less than 2 weeks vacation. That's like the reality of majority of Americans. They use those vacation days to go to church or have church holidays or have a family vacation, right? And most other times they're just working. They're just trying to get by from day to day. That's the majority of Americans. It's not like intellectuals at Georgetown who they just spend time thinking. Majority of the people in the world don't spend time thinking. They spend time doing, and so I would say, 99% of the intellectuals in America, they're like out of touch with reality. They're living in their mind and they're projecting from their mind a reality that is not real. It's just in your mind. And that's why, I'm happy to run for U.S. Congress in Virginia's 8th District with an official platform against gay marriage, against abortion, because I understand the people. White liberal intellectuals, they may not like the fact that I'm taking a position that is representative of, I would say, 90% or more of Americans, because in their mind, their ideas of gay marriage being, social justice and civil rights and human rights, blah, 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 blah. They think that is the reality for everyone. It's not. If gay marriage or homosexuality is a reality that is valued by everyone, why is it that you had Roman civilization with homosexuality and gay marriage rise and fall because of that, or Greek society? It's not like we didn't have homosexuals in the past. We had societies that were more prolific in encouraging homosexuality than America. And even in those times, working class people in those societies were heterosexual. It's just the elites engaged in homosexual activity. They had leisure time. But most working class people were heterosexual, had heterosexual marriage, and they protected their domain, meaning their wife, their children, and they ensure that their children get heterosexually married, continue their family line in working class settings, which is the majority of the population in the Roman time and in the Greek time. So obviously the artifacts that we get, like the art and literature, they're created by less than 1% of the population, but it doesn't reflect the population. Do you see what I'm saying? Because the working class were the majority of the Greek democracy, were the majority of Roman democracy who are not homosexual, who reject homosexuality. for themselves and their children, you're not going to get anything from them because they don't write books. They work every day. They may not even read a single book in 40 years. It's like majority of Americans do not read books. I mean, you think like every American is reading a book a day? No, majority of Americans do not read a book in 1 year or maybe even 10 years. They don't read a book. They may read a Bible because they go to church. But apart from the Bible, they may not read anything. And certainly they're not going to read a book, majority of Americans. Right? I mean, majority of Americans are what I would call normal. They read books in high school and they hated it. And now they're working and making money. They work because they have to make money. But when they're like not at work, they don't want to be reading a book because they don't want it to feel like a high school, or even college, So when they have free time, they may do things they like they may watch a baseball, go to baseball games or football games. They may play basketball with their son. They may go fishing or hunting, or some of them may like to garden, or go play bowling, get involved in a bowling league, go to the movies. Most normal people in America don't read a book in their free time. Right? I would say people who read books in free time are less than 10% of American population. I would say 90% of American population will not read a book during their free time if they don't have to. And so like all these liberal intellectuals who think that they're important, they're not really important because they represent less than 10% of America's population. And they are in less than 1% of the population. Meaning anything they write will not be read by more than 10% of America's population. People just don't care, and so because they live their life, they have their religious values, right? They go to church, or they may not go to church, but they have like kind of a cultural Christianity value system. They have a girlfriend. They don't want you to hit on their girlfriend or have sex with their girlfriend, which kind of matches the Christian value system to not commit adultery, right? So on a functional level, 90% or more of Americans, whether they read a book or not read a book, operate from like a Christian value system. They're having sex with their wife. They don't want you to have sex with their wife. They're going to protect their domain. And they're not going to say, oh, I'm trying to keep 10 commandments. But it's just part of the way they are because they're part of the Christian culture, which is a certain way of looking at things. So over 90% of the American population assume that you should not have sex with their wife and that you should not try to have sex with their wife, and it's wrong. Well, they may try, but they know it's wrong. And they know they could be, killed for it or whatever, They understand the domains. They understand cultural realities that exist in America. And so majority of America, like 90%, they operate day to day from what I call values of Western civilization that has existed for 2,000 years. And then they resent it if you try to force them out of that domain. And so white liberal progressives don't understand just because people vote Democrat doesn't mean they agree with their concept of social justice or, human rights. That's not why they're voting for you. Most of them probably don't even know what you really represent. I mean, so there's a kind of a party system that has been existent, but people can be pushed out of that. Like President Trump got a lot of Democrat working class to vote for him by supporting white nationalists, by supporting, religious fundamentalism. He was able to get a lot of Democrats to vote for him because there are a lot of Democrats who are that way, but they vote Democrat because they're a union member. It's something like that. There are realities like that you have to understand. And you can always get their support if you align yourself with their value system or their religion. And so President Trump was able to do that successfully in 2016. Political scientists, because they're white progressives, they don't understand what's going on because they don't understand how culture works. And so you're lucky because I am Leonardo da Vinci of 21st century who can explain all these things to you. And if you're a political science professor at Georgetown or Harvard watching this show, you have something that you can learn from me. You see why you were wrong in 2016 in predicting Hillary Clinton victory, because you have limited understanding of culture and popular dynamics. I'm just saying, you were wrong. I was right. I predicted President Trump would win in 2016. I voted for him, and I predicted he was going to win. I thought Ted Cruz would lose because he was kind of pushing religious, tolerance at that time. You can't get anywhere in America pushing like religious tolerance because most of the American working class are religiously intolerant. When President Trump, presented himself as religiously intolerant, he got more votes, more voters support him. It's just that way. This is America. And it's not just like that in America. It's in every country in the world. There's a type of religiosity that is kind of exclusive, and we call that in history in-group, out-group social dynamic, like us versus them. Identities of communities are often forged in negative terms, like who we are not, then positive terms, who we are. And so America's working class say, they may not be like religiously fundamentalist Christian, but they know they're not Muslim. They know they're not Hindu. They know they're not Buddhist. They know they're not atheists. You know what I'm saying? So they forge their identity negatively. So when Ted Cruz comes out and say, oh, let's be all religiously like kumbaya, my Lord, with everybody else, you're not going to get people excited in the working class because they forge their identity negative against others. And that's just, you could be judgmental about it. And I know like a lot of liberal progressive choose to be judgmental about it, to their detriment, in the long term. But, the point is, for Ted Cruz, do you want to win elections or do you want to lose elections? Now, all your political consultants who get their training from School of Public Policy, they don't know the reality. I wouldn't trust them. I will never trust like someone who got a master's degree at Harvard School of Public Policy because they're learning the book knowledge. They don't understand the people. So I would never use political consultants who have master's degree from Harvard School of Government or master's school from Harvard School of Public Policy, because those degrees are good when you're like looking at a resume and trying to hire people. But those degrees, I would argue, actually has brainwashed them into not understanding how people think. So in a sense, if you seek out a master's degree from Harvard School of Government or master's school from like Harvard School of Public Policy, my immediate thinking as a historian, you kind of have studied popular trends in history, my immediate instinct will be, no, don't trust what they say, because they've been trained within a certain system, a microcosm system, which has a certain way of looking at the world, looking at the reality. And people are not that way, right? And so, yeah, I would never trust like political strategists or consultants who think America is a certain way. And this is where I disagree with Tim Hennigan. He's like, American people like to be tolerant. American people, he talks about American people the way like a lot of liberal progressive talk about American people. And that's why I was kind of surprised, because he was the chairman of the Fairfax County Republican Committee. And I disagree with them, and I said, I don't think that's how American people are. And I offered the proof, I wanted to be kind of respectful of him. That's why I kind of spoke in a more respectful tone. But, that's why President Trump won, because he wasn't tolerant. Right? I mean, I think people think that American people are tolerant. American people are not tolerant. Um, you know, and many American people don't care what you think of them. If they're not tolerant, that's fine. They live their life, and they don't want you to tell them what to think, right? Um, and so, yeah, I mean, that's why President Trump won, because he just tapped into the discontent. He tapped into the intolerance of the American people, right? Because American people are intolerant. I mean, it goes all the way back to the Puritan days, right? And so when Tim Hannigan, the chair of past, chair of Fairfax County Republican Party, told me like American people are tolerant, I'm like, no, they're not. Even American people in Virginia's 8th district, I think when push comes to shove, they would stick to their identities, like religious identities, historic cultural identities. And so obviously I'm banking on that. I mean, I believe in the Bible, and I agree with Romans 1, homosexuality is unnatural and evil, and is a crime that should be punishable by law. So that's the position of the Catholic Church. That's official position for 2,000 years. That's the position of evangelical Christians who are conservative. So it's not like it's my idea. I'm just kind of, following my Christian religious predecessors. Um, and I would say over 150 million Americans would agree with that on a personal level, um, uh, consciously. And so, yes, it's my idea, and it's my official position running for U.S. Congress in Virginia's 8th district that gay marriage should be legalized, that abortion should be legalized. Yes, that is my official position as a political candidate, and it's my political affiliation. But I believe that that actually wins me more votes in Virginia's 8th district, which is considered probably the most liberal district in Virginia. But I believe that it will get me votes. And see, this is where I think liberal Democrats or liberal progressives and I differ. Because, I've studied history and I understand how people's cultural systems work, how they are at their core a product of their culture and their civilization. And that's something that I think, liberal progressives don't understand. When times get tough, when stress tests are applied, all these people who voted for Don Byer, they will stick to their religion. They'll stick to their core traditional Western civilization value systems. And that is predictable in history, meaning whenever calamities strike, there is always gravitation toward their religion and swing to the right wing politically. And so, and that's in every civilization, in every culture, every nation, and so it's a pattern that is established in history that cannot be denied. And that's why, yes, I believe in these positions, but I believe that these positions will get me victory. And so, it worked with President Trump, in 2016, although he's kind of going in the way of moderate. And so I'm not sure if he will win in 2020. I'm not sure because, like, as I explained to you in this show, American people are intolerant, and they're proud of being intolerant. I mean, they may not say that publicly, but when they're sitting alone, they're like, "Man, I like me. I like the way I think. I'm who I am. Screw them. If they don't like the way I am. That's how most Americans are thinking right now in their home, watching this show. You know what I'm saying? You agree with me?" Harry's like eyes are like really wide. you know, Harry, come on, read some history books. Study history. See, being a professional historian, I read text after text. I studied civilization of civilization, and I might have had the look that Harry has. He looks shocked, but I'm a historian. I've studied it all. right? I've studied all these civilizations. I've studied the trends in different ethnicities, you know? My focus in college was like Asian history, non-Western history, but focus with Asia. You know, that's for my bachelor's degree. And then, you know, for graduate program, you know, doctoral program, I focus on Jewish history and Western civilization. So I was able to compare both civilizations, Asian, uh, you know, from undergraduate days, and then, you know, Western civilization. And yeah, I mean, I'm not confident that President Trump will win in 2020 just because he's kind of swung a little bit towards the left. And so, you know, I don't know if people who will come out to vote for him in 2020 the way people did in 2016. Because, you know, you present yourself as a moderate, you're not going to get the votes. But why do you think Ted Cruz almost lost? He may lose the next election, you know, and why do you think um, McConnell almost lost? And he may lose the next election. Look at Eric Cantor. He was like the Speaker of the House, and he's like out because he presented himself as a moderate. You can't get votes. Eric Cantor is in Richmond, Virginia area, who was a U.S. House of Representative member. He was a Speaker of the House, but he lost the election, you know, because he presented himself as a moderate while he was a Speaker of the House as a U.S. Congressman. Nobody likes moderates, you know. And so, yeah, why do you think John McCain never became president? Because he was moderate. Why do you think Mitt Romney never became president? Because he's moderate. If they swung extremely right wing, both of them would have won the presidency. Look at Ronald Reagan. You know how extremely right wing it was. And George W. Bush, he presented himself as an evangelical right winger. I mean, these are the people who win elections. You know, that's just the way, you know, it is. Because majority of the population is very conservative, right? But they're not going to vote for a moderate, you know, because they don't get excited about moderates. Who gets excited about lukewarm, you know? Moderates are like lukewarm. People get excited about people who are like extremely right wing, you know, like Ronald Reagan or George W. or Donald Trump, you know. That's the kind of people that people get excited about, all these like right wing rhetoric. Um, why do you think Rush Limbaugh was so popular in America? This is right wing rhetoric. This, you know, they tap into the sentiment of American people. And I know white liberal progressive, they're like very judgmental, and they look down on American working class Americans, you know, who are Christians. But you know that further fuels the identity of the American working class and forges fundamentalist conservatism of America's working class. You know, when liberals keep criticizing that, you know, because you know, have you ever had a relationship and you told the girl like a criticism? How does she react? Does she change her ways? No, you're gonna have a fight. And she's gonna like do what you told her not to do just to spite you. And you probably do that too to your girlfriend, right? If she tells you, I don't like this about you. And at first you're like, okay, honey. But like you get mad about it, sitting there in your room watching TV. And the next time you see her, you like slip something in that's like obnoxious, you know, that relates to that, you know? Yeah, I mean, you can't change people, you know, right? In relationships. And you have experienced that in relationship. And so, and we're just thinking about like dating, um, you know, how do you propose to change the core value systems of people, you know, who are, you know, who've been there for decades? And this is the idiocy of white progressivism in America. They think like they know it all, and that how they could get people to follow them, or they could change laws to force people to conform. That's the idiocy of white progressivism. So I see white progressives at Georgetown. I think like, man, these people are like, they don't understand people. They don't understand reality. They should study sociology, history, you know, in depth, you know, and see how civilizations work. They will come to understand they're so irrelevant, both to American history as a force of history, They have this sense of self-importance because they're at Georgetown and they have a title, director of this, director of that, but they're so insignificant. They have so little impact in America, and they think they have a lot of impact. That's the funny thing. When President Trump became president, he proved every single political scientist, professor at liberal universities wrong. Because they all predicted Hillary would win because none of them understood the people, you know? Yeah, and that's why I'm very proud with my political position, opposing gay marriage, homosexuality, and abortion. And I believe like a lot of the people who voted for Don Beyer believe the way that I'm believing personally, on their personal faith position, their personal cultural value system, or their personal familial value system. I'm willing to bet that there's over 70% of whites in Virginia's 8th district who personally believe my position or functionally believe it. They have certain things they want for their children, Yeah. And so, I mean, I value my belief, but also I'm running for U.S. Congress because I believe I can beat Don Beyer. I'm confident I could beat him. And apparently Don Beyer is confident I can beat him too, because he and Ralph Northam are playing dirty politics. They're just trying to put me out of election. And I've explained to you that, you know, I started to run as an independent in Virginia's 8th district in March. And you could watch a video after this and see why that is. Virginia Governor Northam on March 30th declared stay-at-home order from March 30th to last till June 10th. And I have to submit 1,000 signatures by Virginia state law by June 9th. Every state has their own election law to get on the ballot. And it's different for every state. And so Virginia state law requires independent candidates to submit 1,000 signatures by June 9th. And Ralph Northam knows this. Virginia Board of Elections know this. So I wrote to Virginia's Board of Elections saying Ralph Northam made it impossible for me to collect 1,000 signatures from March 30th to June 10th. I have to submit the signatures by June 9th. It's illegal for me to go from house to house to collect signatures with stay-at-home order in place. The Board of Election Commissioner, the chair, Mr. Piper, wrote back and said, I don't have the authority to waive your 1,000 signatures, but obviously Governor Northam, as a governor, does. He's the one who issued an executive order to stay at home. So I wrote a letter to Governor Northam saying, waive these 1,000 signatures because you put the stay-at-home order in place that makes it impossible for me to collect signatures. I haven't heard back from him. And I don't know what's taking his. He's like taking his time because he doesn't want me on the Virginia's ballot because he knows that I could be in Don Beyer. I hope you will, write to Virginia Governor Northam and say we want fairness in Virginia election. Waive the 1,000 signature requirement for Heerak Christian Kim for U.S. Congress in Virginia's 8th district. He's running as an independent. And let him be on the ballot and let Don Beyer win fair and square. I'm confident I could beat him in November. That I represent your views and your value systems more than Don Beyer does. And Don Beyer thinks that he will lose to, obviously. And so this kind of word-building network tried to put me out of Virginia politics. It's ridiculous. I would appreciate it if you could write to Don Beyer. I stand for your rights, religious rights, your First Amendment rights. And in this show, I emphasize the First Amendment right. You have the right to believe what you want, and you have the right to share your views publicly, right, without discrimination, without being fired from your job. Obviously, white liberal progressive want to fire everybody who don't agree with them or minimize them. And that's their they think they're gods, right? These white liberal progressives. And I see that at Georgetown. I see that at University of Pennsylvania. I see that at UCLA. It's ridiculous. They don't even represent 1% of America's population. And their views. And so yeah. And so get me on that ballot and vote for me on November 3rd for U.S. Congress. I have the top 5 COVID-19 cases and their death rates for you. You see that a lot of people are dying. In New York, there's 361,515 cases. 29,141 people have died so far. It's 8% of the cases end up in death in New York. New Jersey, there are 154,154 cases. That's ending up in death of 11,138 deaths. That's 7% of the cases are ending up in death. Illinois, there are 110,304 cases. Out of that, 4,856 are ending up with death. That's representing 4% of the cases. California, there are 93,153 cases, and that's ending up in death of 3,742. That's 4% of the cases. Massachusetts is number 5, 92,675 cases. That's ending up in death of 6,372, 7% of the cases. So there are a lot of deaths in these states, and it's kind of growing, and it will continue to grow. But as long as President Trump kind of defends Christians, even if there are 30 million people dead in America, he's going to have their support. And that's the way people are. Something's more important than death. Now, as you know, we're celebrating class of 2020. Congratulations to everybody. And for Clinical Nurse Leader Program, which is a master's program at Georgetown University School of Nursing and Health Studies, and there are 25 of us this year graduating in 2020. Our program goes until August. We have the pinning ceremony on Friday. So, we're celebrating the pinning ceremony now. And I talked about the pinning ceremony a couple episodes ago. So go watch and find out more about it. That's this Friday. And so we're all celebrating. Congratulations to all the clinical nurse leader class of 2020 who's going to be in the pinning ceremony. I love you guys. So we worked hard, all of us, every single one of us worked so hard. Some of us had nervous breakdown. I didn't have a nervous breakdown, but I think some people had nervous breakdowns. It's an intense program, but it's worth it because we get trained to become clinical nurse leaders, and it's very intense 2-year program. And so I would argue, it's worth it. I'm proud that I did it, and I think every one of us, to my knowledge, are proud that they did it, have no regrets. And so, I would encourage you to apply for a clinical nurse leader program, and I think you will find it meaningful for you. The photos that you see here are from GradGov Homecoming Happy Hour. As you know, I'm Vice President of GradGov, Georgetown University Graduate Student Government from 2019 to 2020 academic year, basically from May to May. We organized a lot of social activities. And as you know, I'm like the fun-loving guy who everybody loves. And I'm like the fun guy. And so during the social GradGov Homecoming Happy Hour, I greeted a lot of people and I made them feel welcome. I serve a graduate student at Georgetown. There are 9,000 of them, and I try to support them and encourage them, fight for their right to freedom of speech, freedom of religion. So, I'm willing to, sacrifice a lot to stand up for their rights and their needs, and also make them happy during these socials. So you see, it was a homecoming weekend, so there's a sign there at Healy Hall, and you see the happy people right next to that photo in the photo there, yeah, next to the Healy Hall building. And underneath that, you see, two people that I befriended, graduate students. And next to that is one of our graduate senators, and she's from Pakistan. She's Muslim, and she's amazing. And she's a good dancer. During the boat cruise yesterday, I shared the photo of boat cruise. We kind of danced together a little bit, and yeah, it was fun. She was an amazing dancer, so it was fun to dance with her. And she's an amazing person. I'm sure she's going to do many important things in the future. And you see in the center of a photograph of Marta Sidoriak. She's the General Secretary of Georgetown Collaborative Diplomacy Initiative. I'm the president. And she's a first-year student at Master of Science in Foreign Service. And so she's there with her classmates. I'm sure she's going to do amazing things. She worked in Ukraine for 3 years, and she organized this amazing event on Ukraine for Georgetown Collaborative Diplomacy Initiative, and executed very successfully. So I'm sure she's going to be an amazing leader in the future. And underneath that, I took a photo with some, friendly graduate students. And next to that, that's the chemistry PhD students. And you see the gentleman in purple shirt. He's Filipino. He's a senator of the chemistry PhD program. Great guy. I really like him. And then above that, you see a photo of PhD students in Latin American studies, Latino studies. And they're great. I really love them as well. So it was a good social homecoming happy hour. Everybody had a lot of fun. It was like several hours long, 2-3 hours long. It was complete success, And we gave out these shirts for free, So a lot of people were happy to get free shirts, and we tried to support them and encourage them. Graduate studies is very hard. So, a lot of PhD students showed up, which is great. And generally, if you're a PhD student, you're locked in for like 4, 5, 6 years. And they'll do a lot of important things. They become professors in universities and do research, hi guys. I'm proud of every single one of them. They accomplished so much in their life, and they're going to go and do a lot of great things. It was a great honor serving everyone as vice president in 2019 to 2020 academic year as vice president of graduate student government at Georgetown University. Made a lot of great friends, and helped a lot of people. So, it's a great thing. Anyway, I'm glad that you were able to share this time with me and kind of learn more about history and understanding of social, emotional, cultural dynamics, and how that informs decision-making on an individual and group levels. I'm happy that you were able to kind of learn about that, and also think about COVID-19 and how that fits into election year 2020, President Trump running for elections, and how white liberal progressives fit into that. So I'm glad that you were able to kind of see an analysis that is at a professional level regarding that. So I hope you will tune in tomorrow to learn more about elections, COVID-19, American people, social dynamics, healthcare, and a lot of interesting stuff that you might not have learned about in the past. So you learn about COVID, you learn about all of things that are kind of related to that. So I try to meet the needs of the whole person, right? You're not just a political science person, you're not just a worker, you're not just an intellectual, you're the whole person. So I meet you and your needs as the whole person. And we call that cura personalis in the Jesuit tradition. And Georgetown University is a Jesuit Catholic university. I try to meet your need as a whole person. So I'm glad that I'm doing that for you. Thanks for tuning in, and you're welcome for providing you with the information that you need. And I'll look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. I hope that your family will be well and that you will be well too. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye-bye.